This show was fire, pun intended. Fellow film fans, what up? It's your boy Tay, and this is Tay Talks Talkies. I just finished season 1 of House of the Dragon on HBO, the latest show based on Game of Thrones, based on George R. R. Martin's work, and it was fantastic. And I want to talk about it with you guys. Let's go. So right off the bat, the word dragon is in the title. So I expected dragons, and damn it, I got dragons. They deliver the goods. I got so many dragons in the show, I can't even keep count. Each dragon has their own personality. Each dragon has their own look. Every dragon is so distinguishable, and it's really awesome. It's like their own characters themselves. And I like how they show that the dragons can't be controlled that easily. In Game of Thrones, Daenerys' dragons all looked the same. They were all siblings of the same clutch of eggs. But in House of the Dragon, we get so many different types of dragons. This is an era almost 200 years prior to Game of Thrones when dragons are ubiquitous. They are living all over the place, and they're healthy, and they're actually pretty massive. Especially Vhagar, the queen of all dragons, the largest dragon in the show. And Vhagar is so different looking than Caraxes, Daemon's dragon. And there's just so many different types of dragons, and it's awesome. I love dragons. I think they improved pretty greatly upon their animation method for the dragons, and it was already fantastic. The dragons in Game of Thrones looked killer, but these dragons have so much personality. They all look so different. Thank you for giving me dragons. Next, we have to talk about the actors. All of these performances are riveting. The thing about the UK is they produce amazing actors. Game of Thrones showcased that perfectly. Not a bad performance in all the seasons. It wasn't their fault what happened. And House of the Dragon certainly showcases that as well. All these performances are A+, 10 out of 10. And I was a little bit concerned during the first time jump in the show. I was a little bit worried that they'd be speeding up the pacing the same way they did at the end of Game of Thrones. The thing that made Game of Thrones so great is the methodical approach they took at storytelling. They really took their time telling the story, setting up all the connections, all the relationships between characters, and really letting you know who a character is so that when things happen to the character, they hit 10 times harder than they would if it was just a character that you knew on a shallow level. And that's what made Game of Thrones so great. When things like the Red Wedding happened, they hit extra hard because we really knew and grew to love these characters. So House of Dragon did an amazing job doing that. With the time jumps, they were only doing that to arrive at a certain point in the story where it really started to pick up. So it made sense to me once I got to that point that, okay, the time jumps were almost necessary to really tell the story in a timely manner, because the meat of the story is the Dance of the Dragons, which is a giant war with a bunch of dragons, and I can't wait to see that. It's going to be so rad, and I'm excited. Matt Smith gives a killer performance. Haven't really seen him in too much besides for Doctor Who, but he crushes it as Daemon Targaryen. Super complex character with a lot of layers, and I think he's easily the most compelling character in the show because of that. Paddy Considine gave an amazing performance as King Viserys. Absolutely incredible. There's one scene where he is struggling to do something, and it is just incredible. His acting was truly impressive. I loved Millie Alcock as Rhaenyra, and I was sad to see her go. I really hope that she has a successful career because I think she's an awesome actress. But the job that Emma Darcy's doing is incredible. I mean, she is doing an amazing job. And I think Rhaenyra is, besides for Daemon, the most compelling character from a believability and a relatability perspective. She just wants what's best for her kids. She just wants what's best for the people that she rules, and she wants to make her dad proud, and I think that's a pretty relatable thing to most of us. So I think she's the most relatable character. So I can see Rhaenyra becoming beloved the same way that Daenerys did. Olivia Cooke is awesome as Alicent. Eve Best kills it as the Princess Rhaenys. I'm really impressed with Fabian Frankel, who plays Sir Criston Cole. Sir Criston Cole, another really interesting character. And Ewan Mitchell, who plays Aemon Targaryen. And Aemon Targaryen is my favorite character in the show. He's the character that when he's on screen, I get the most pumped and most excited about. Aemon Targaryen, he brings him to life in such a rich and compelling way. I don't even know if George R. R. Martin could have imagined it being brought to life that well. So kudos to the actors. They all were fantastic. Every iteration of the character was great. And that's to be expected when you're dealing with these classically trained UK actors. Next, I want to talk about the methodical approach that they took while telling the story. The thing that made Game of Thrones so great, like I mentioned, was the methodical storytelling. Taking your time, showing these characters, having conversations that seemingly aren't that significant, but really they are so significant to make us have that type of connection with the character. So we lost that at the end of Game of Thrones, and that was the big detriment to why Season 8 and most of Season 7 were not on the same quality as Seasons 1 through 5 and even Season 6. But in House of the Dragon, I was so excited to see them taking their time and really setting up these characters, showing intimate moments with these characters, so we really feel like we know these characters. And I do feel like I know these characters, so when things happen to them, like what happened at the end of the show, you really feel it, and it really hits home extra hard. The same way that the Red Wedding hit, the same way that the Purple Wedding hit, or whatever they called Joffrey's wedding. Those iconic Game of Thrones moments we're getting in House of the Dragon. The penultimate episode of Season 1, the episode prior to the finale, was incredible. It might have been better than the finale, which Game of Thrones always did as well. 9 out of 10 times better than episode 10. And the fact that House of the Dragon is following that trend is encouraging for sure. And I am so excited to see where the story goes. I have not read the book, so I am not familiar with where the story goes, but I am beyond excited to see how these characters react to everything that's going on in Season 1. And if you haven't watched House of the Dragon, I think you'll love it. If you've never watched Game of Thrones, I still think you'll love House of the Dragon. And because it's a prequel series, it's a great reason to jump on now, because if you love House of the Dragon, you can always go and explore Game of Thrones after. But if you do watch Game of Thrones, you can safely stop watching after Season 6, but that's just my opinion. Season 7 is overrated. Another cool thing that House of Dragon does that I love is places that were talked about in Game of Thrones, houses and families that were talked about in Game of Thrones, we get to see expanded upon in this show. We get to see that fleshed out. We get to see it in person, and that's awesome. It's almost like this meta experience where you're getting an extension of Game of Thrones, but in a revitalized and refreshed way, where you don't feel like it's stale and uninspired and rushed. So definitely exciting. And the creators of this show, please, please, please don't lose any momentum. If any other projects present themselves, don't rush through House of the Dragon. Finish it, please. Strongly, the way it should be. The last thing I want to talk about in the show is the realities that it depicted of living in that type of era. It's a fake world that Game of Thrones is based in. However, it's based on medieval times. And seeing the realities of life back then, just something as simple that we take for granted now as childbirth, was life or death back then. And I love how they really hammered that home. We've seen a lot of life or death instances in House of the Dragon in relation to childbirth. Something that we take for granted now, something that's so easy now because of our understanding of healthcare and our healthcare facilities, how high tech they are. But back then, with their lack of understanding, it really showed how dangerous childbirth is. You have to make hard decisions sometimes, and there's no right decision in those instances, and it really makes you appreciative of how far we've come from just a medical sense. And yeah, I think House of the Dragon is spectacular. If you haven't watched it, like I said, jump on now while we're waiting for Season 2 to be cooked up. And I'm excited. I think there's high prospects here for an epic, epic, epic show. And that's all we can ask for, right? In a time where there's not that much great content being put out, give us original content that's quality. That's all we ask for. That's all I got for you guys today. As always, like, subscribe, share, comment. Any little thing means the world to me, and I will see you guys soon. Tay out.